Welcome gentlemen, gentlewomen and gentle aliens. Today is Tuesday. You are getting your last reset of Season 3 in NA already. Tomorrow we're getting that in EU. Today we're talking about something that was suggested to me by one of my faithful followers, servants, simps, slaves, who asked me something that I sort of let linger for a bit as I wasn't really thinking much of anything about it, but then popped back into my mind and I started to realize that, I had a few problems racking up all of the points I wanted to express. The question in question was, what are you going to take away positively from Shadowlands? What do you wish was going to be continued, extended in Dragonflight? What are you happy that is going to stay in Dragonflight as an addition that we have seen in Shadowlands? Because, Shadowlands won't likely live up to have a very good memory in the eyes and the minds of many players. I don't think this type of expansion will get the Mists of Pandaria post-mortem treatment, which is now suddenly being very highly rated and very highly fondly remembered by many players. I don't think that's going to be the case for Shadowlands. So I was getting to think about the cool things that Shadowlands did. Amongst the many bad things, which are so many, will deserve its own video on the side. Talking about the good things that Shadowlands did, it got me thinking about the positives of the expansion that we can take away with us as we get closer to Dragonflight. Let's start with a first positive, a small, tiny positive which I'm sure improved the life of many players, which is the Great Vault. If you compare this to what we had in BFA, it is of course a gigantic improvement. BFA was a single item, you have no way of choosing whatsoever, just take it or leave it. Meanwhile, Shadowlands gave us this amazing system for picking and choosing, for helping you to close out the gearing of your character, for example, for helping a slow but steady increase in the item level of your alts, for example. The Great Vault has been amazing. Of course, we can find the usual complaint posts and threads and tweets about the guy who is getting no upgrades in the vault, the guy who has been waiting for his weapon in the vault for 6 months, or the guy who has been offered the same bracers 5 times in a row. Yeah, sure, that's gonna happen, but it's definitely a significant improvement to what we have gotten in BFA, and I am quite happy that the Great Vault is going to continue, is going to be extended into Dragonflight. That's gonna be quite good of an addition. Another change I am quite happy with that happened in Shadowlands was the removal of Titanforging. This apparently is a thorny subject because some subset of the player base did enjoy Titanforging as a mechanic. Of course, you don't hear these players anymore because they have been luckily all locked up in the mental asylum they deserve to be in, but before it used to be quite the contentious debate about Titanforging. We did get the first test run from Blizzard at the end of BFA when they removed Titanforging, hoping they were getting a pat on the back from the player base, except they replaced Titanforging with Corruption, which was literally Titanforging on steroids. So it's good that we got rid of Titanforging once and for all in Shadowlands. It has not made a comeback whatsoever. It's not gonna be in Dragonflight whatsoever. So I think that was a good change of direction for the developer, I guess, philosophy in items to be obtained from, for example, open world quests being better than mythic raiding gear. That was quite awful, and I'm happy that it got changed. Another thing which is very interesting, it might be one of those zigzag yes, no, yes type of activities and features that were changed and quite divided the community, which is Anima / Azerite / Artifact Power. In Shadowlands, initially, everyone, and we have to admit this guys, everyone was happy that Anima Power that was being introduced was not going to be tied to character power. We had plenty of people, the usual wow bad merchants, saying that, oh yeah, I'm sure Anima Power won't be tied to character power because Blizzard said so. Oh yeah, that's totally gonna happen. But Blizzard, ever since the alpha and the beta, was quite adamant. Anima Power was not going to be tied to character progression, was not going to be limiting several systems in your game, in your character power increase. For example, you need artifact power to increase the level of your weapon, to unlock more and more talent options. You need Azerite power to increase your Azerite rings available to your Azerite armor. It even fed into future board powers like Azerite power being needed to unlock the essences, the essence slots from Eternal Paras patch. That was not going to happen in Shadowlands. So it is very good that we got the full change. No more Titanforging from world quests for gear, the Titanforges, as well as no more AP grinding. No more logging in the game and the first thing you do is open the map and click on the 12 different AP world quests to track them, because you have to do them for 3 different characters if you want to keep up your character power in the patch. So that was seen very positively. That was seen as a very good thing, right? Most people would agree with that. Obviously, we will expand on this in our video about the negative things of Shadowlands, because this was one of the main culprits which led to the open world of Shadowlands feeling so useless, feeling so pointless, giving you so few things to do in the open world because of the lack of character power from world quests, for example. That was one of the main problems. So we will go on the other part of this argument on the next video about it, but at face value, it was a good change to go from mandatory AP grind for character power in BFA or Legion into Shadowlands, which had none. Another positive, which I believe it's a positive, flat out positive. Some people, again, might be complaining about this, but I do believe Torghast overall has been a positive. If you go and look at the attempts of Blizzard to come up with new alternative activities from the Holy Trinity of PvP, Mythic Plus and raiding, they have tried a few things. They have gotten scenarios in Mists of Pandaria, they have gotten the garrison system and the shipyard system in Warlords, they have gotten the Withered training scenario in Legion, they have went for island expeditions and warfronts in BFA, and then this expansion they went on with Torghast. I think quite handily, if we had to make a poll, Torghast would win as the better of all of these alternative activities in all of the previous expansions. So it was quite good. Obviously, we have the complaint part, which is that Torghast was tied to character power for a little bit over a half of an expansion because of Soul Cinders and because of Soul Ash being required for legendary crafting. So it was a side activity which was actually mandatory for your character power. Some people might not have liked that because of this, but in my opinion, in my personal experience with Torghast, it was quite nice. I wasn't feeling this sense of dread within me, like when I log in BFA on my character and I am reminded that I have to do my weekly Iron Expedition runs on 3 different characters. You know, I never felt as bad knowing I had to run some Torghast on my characters in Shadowlands. At the very least, for me, I think overall Torghast was a net gain to the activities added in Shadowlands and a positive addition to Shadowlands. Lastly, an underrated positive of Torghast, I believe, it was giving the freedom of design to developers to come up with wacky OP effects that they could never add into the normal game. So this gave them room to try some more out-of-the-picture alternative type of power-ups. And we are seeing in Dragonflight talents that some of these Torghast powers are actually making their way into normal talents now. So Torghast was also being used positively for devs to try out some more niche, alternative, wacky type of powers, which have turned out to be, popular enough, cool enough, interactive enough with your spec, that are making a return as full-fledged talents in Dragonflight. So that, I think, is also a pretty good win for a side activity like Torghast. Another good positive of Shadowlands, this is a little bit more raid related, competitive related. I was a very big fan of all 3 raids in Shadowlands. I think they were of extremely high quality. There were some disappointments, obviously, nothing is perfect. Castonatria was disappointing in the balancing of Stone Legion generals. Sanctum was disappointing in the balancing of Guardian of the First Ones and Kel'Thuzad, which were supposed to be 2 of the last bosses, so big dick, tough bosses. They were a disappointment. And then Sepulchre, of course, with the whole tuning of the later bosses in general. But, if tuning is your only problem, I think it's a win already for your raids. I think overall they are one of the, I'm not saying this with 100% certainty, so don't quote me on this, but they are one of the best, possibly the best ever set of 3 raids in a row in the same expansion. You know, you might be fond of other raids from previous expansions, but they are not followed or preceded by similarly high quality raids. You might be a fan of Ulduar, but remember, Ulduar came after a rehashed Naxxramas and before Trial of the Grand Crusader, an abomination of a raid. You might be a fan of something like Nighthold, but Nighthold came before Tomb of Sargeras, which was a horribly balanced and way too long raid, and more importantly, it came after Emerald Nightmare, which was a meme of a raid. So I think that as a quality of back-to-back-to-back raids in a single expansion, this is one of the strongest we have had in a long time. I can go back to something like Mogushan Palace into Heart of Fear into Throne of Thunder, or Heart of Fear into Throne of Thunder into Siege, as one of the 3 strongest setups of raids in the same expansion. But this one in Shadowlands was very, very high quality as well when it came to raids. Don't worry, the worst part of the raid will make its appearance in the other video about the negatives of Shadowlands, because of course we can't let the trash in the raids go away without being talked down to, because it was an abomination, which I hope won't repeat itself in Dragonflight raids. Lastly, I wanted to finish, just for the drama, with something that can be seen as both a positive and a negative. Because this is something just in classic Blizzard style of releasing something in the expansion which is terrible, but then by the end of the expansion it's actually pretty good. We have seen this type of mentality from Blizzard time and time again, and what I'm talking about in the specific of Shadowlands is Covenants. Covenants were released as an abomination. They were locked in all sorts of ways. Changing Covenants took you weak. You still had to regrind things like Renown, things like AP for your Covenant haul. You still had to be locked in certain Covenants based by essentially the power they had if you wanted to be competitive. Community outcry lasted for months and months and months and months, and eventually we got to what we have now, which is a fully swappable, zero downtime, extremely easy to catch up in Renown, for example, all soulbinds unlocked from the get-go, very, very easy to swap around, which effectively gives you 4 combat abilities and 4 utility abilities split into 4 options, which I think could be cool in this free version, in this easy to swap version in Dragonflight, if we know they are as easy and as player friendly as the last version of the Covenant system. I think that would be cool. Obviously, there is the risk that you get the first version of the Covenants at the start of this expansion, which was awful and definitely created frustrations and annoyances in many players. So that's why I said it's both a yes and a no. That's why I said it's both gonna be taking part in this video and in the negatives of Shadowlands video, because it's essentially both. It has been both Schrodinger's content for this Covenant system by Blizzard, both good and bad at the same time. We can finish the video with something that is not quite in-game, it's not quite a feature in-game, I am hoping it's here or I'm hoping it's gonna continue in Dragonflight, but it is something more about the developers' mentality, the way they set themselves towards the community as a whole, which is my hunch, my idea, my hope, from what I was able to see in this past year or so, which is seemingly we can sort of see the fact that devs are more willing to listen to accept community feedback and change things based on what the community is responding, what the community is telling them. The first time this happened, it was still received with not negativity but depression, more or less. This was throughout basically the lowest point of this expansion, and perhaps the lowest point of Blizzard and WoW in several years, if not ever, which was after the several lawsuits happening against Blizzard, plus several content creators leaving for Final Fantasy and several players as well. So the approval rate of the game was at an all-time low, and then Blizzard comes out with this fixing patch, this 9.1.5 patch, which makes Covenant freely swappable. It had plenty of skips to the campaign, to the story, plenty of catch-ups to your Renown. It makes everything essentially easier for the players. All of these things that players of course asked for a full year before Blizzard introduced them. So at the time, this patch, which was super positive, was still met with a lot of cynicism, a lot of lack of faith in Blizzard, because the general response was yeah, I mean, they were in the dumps. They were getting blasted by the community left and right. They are just doing this to try to gain some favor back. It's not genuine, okay? They're basically desperate. They have broken the glass in case of emergency with this. Now, it's been over a year. Now we have seen more patches, we have seen more changes, we have seen more additions to the game, we have seen more, I guess, dialogue with the player base when towards Dragonflight content, and I believe there is at the very least a positive. We are leaning towards a more positive side when it comes to being more receptive and being more responsive towards player feedback when it comes to changes. We have seen a handful of things already, like changing the 500 mount achievement reward based on community feedback. We have seen changes like the Hunter talents or the Blood Decay talents have been very swiftly changed in the alpha based on community feedback. So I believe we have seen already some positive, some more willingness from the devs to be responsive to what the community wants, which is still not a guarantee. Many players will still be fearful and not very optimistic about the fact that Blizzard will go back to their old ways as soon as the expansion is released. You know, as soon as they get their player base back, as soon as they get the hype of the expansion back, they will go back to their old ways, right? There are still people that will be convinced of that. I'm not too sure either way. That's just my hunch. That's just the way I feel based on the last few patches we have gotten from Blizzard. So overall, these were my main positives that I have seen in Shadowlands, the main additions compared to BFA and previous expansions I have enjoyed to have made their way in Shadowlands, or things that I am happy will continue from Shadowlands into Dragonflight. This was the positives of Shadowlands video. Eventually we will get the negatives of Shadowlands video to point out all of the bad things that Shadowlands has done, and then we can draw our conclusions about this expansion as a whole. But for the moment, I'm going to leave you to the rest of the start of your reset in NA, or to the rest of your bland, pointless Tuesday if you are in EU. Thank you, of course, and a round of applause as usual to all of my patrons supporting me. This is a pretty good time if you were ever thinking of supporting me even more than what you're already doing, since content will be quite plentiful to go over as we cross our way into Dragonflight from the last season of Shadowlands. I am also, of course, available to be supported even more by liking and commenting down below. For today, the theme of the comments I would like to see is what are your positive takes from Shadowlands, of the ones that have not been listed by myself in this video. Perhaps you also have some positive things you have enjoyed in Shadowlands as a nice surprise, as a nice addition compared to previous expansions, etc, etc. Let me know in the comments what were those takes. And then, of course, you can subscribe to the channel, which is more or less always the end goal of a YouTube video. And for further support, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too sure why you would want to browse Twitter by looking at other content creators' tweets. I feel like I'm becoming a grifter by proxy, so it's very dangerous to go in there, but you do you. And also you can support me by subscribing to my Patreon, which will be not only appreciated, but also will give you access to my Discord server. If you ever want to get even more close to your imaginary best friend, you want to ask some questions, have a chat about any type of content, I am usually available on Discord as well. With this being said, it is time to leave, as I am feeling more and more beads of sweat rolling down my back. It's getting quite annoying, to be fair, so I have to leave and go and take a shower. Thank you guys again for watching, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, oh my god, what a nightmare. The dangers of living in a country that doesn't need AC, because 90% of the year is not needed. Well, that 10% of the year is quite the annoyance, if I have to say.